Thanks for joining us from the Ohio AgNet Voice You Know What the News You Trust studio, sponsored by Grain Equipment Company, where innovation meets execution. I'm Dale Minyo. Quick look to the rain gauge, and we are at 3.99 inches from the first day of April. And looks like temperatures yesterday hit in about 37 degrees this morning, gained about 2 degrees all day, and then didn't drop off much in the evening. So it's going to be a little while before soil warms up and dries out enough to do anything resembling spring planting. Well, oil futures plunged to multi-year lows on Friday after China announced a new round of retaliatory tariffs on U.S. imports set to take effect this week. The move is in response to import duties imposed last week by the Trump administration. The front month WTI crude contract for May delivery on the New York MEX fell for the second straight session, settling at $61.99 a barrel, a decrease of $4.96. All in all, WTI crude has decreased by nearly $10 in 2 trading sessions. June ICE Brent decreased to $65.72 a barrel, a $4.33 drop from the last settle of $70.14 a barrel. The U.S. dollar index rose by 1.12%, settling at 102.920 against a basket of foreign currencies, including the euro, the yen, the pound, and Canadian dollar. China's Customs Tariff Commission said Friday it will impose a 34% tariff on all U.S. imports beginning April 10th, according to state-run news agency. On Thursday, April 2nd, President Donald Trump announced a 10% baseline tariff on all imports effective April 5th. In addition to specific tariffs targeting China, the European Union, imports from Mexico and Canada are currently exempt. Adding to market volatility, the Bureau of Labor Statistics reported Friday that U.S. non-farm payrolls rose by 228,000 in March, beating expectations of 140,000. However, the unemployment rate ticked up to 4.2% from 4.1%. Revisions lowered job gains in January and February by a combined 48,000. Average hourly earnings increased by 9 cents to $36 even. Despite the strong dollar and jobs data, oil prices remained under pressure amid fears of weakening global demand and the economic fallout from escalating trade tensions. Additional downward pressure came from OPEC Plus, which began ramping up output this past week by an expected 2.2 million barrels per day. Today's market's brought to you by Seed Consultants. Simply better performance online at seedconsultants.com. Here's the forecast.
Cold air dominates the forecast to start this week. I'm Chief Meteorologist Ryan Martin. Let's take a look at that Ohio Ag weather update. Cold frontal boundary worked through, or at least started to work through last night. It will continue to push off to the south and east through the day today. That's going to draw down some cold Canadian air, so definitely chilly today versus yesterday. Colder tomorrow than today. I think we see a lot of clouds around today. Any sunshine you see, let's call it a bonus. Tomorrow, I think we see the clouds break up a little bit more, but it will be difficult to see a lot of sunshine through all of Tuesday. We start to see warmer air come up the backside of Canadian high pressure at midweek on Wednesday. As the temperatures moderate, we also see a threat of rain developing. Clouds will increase late Wednesday afternoon. Overnight Wednesday night through Thursday, scattered hit-and-miss rain showers, probably 60% coverage over Ohio. Up to half an inch of moisture can fall out of that. The balance of the week then, Friday into the weekend, back and forth, warm versus cold air, neither really winning out, but I think that can wring some spits and sprinkles out, particularly Friday into early Saturday. Sunday should be drier. And we see strong south flow come in late Sunday afternoon and Sunday night. That sets us up for a much warmer week next week, Monday through Friday, but 2 chances of rain. One with a frontal boundary coming through overnight next Tuesday night and Wednesday, then a bigger, slower moving batch of shower and thunderstorm action Friday into Saturday. That's your forecast update. I'm Chief Meteorologist Ryan Martin.
And thanks, Ryan. Joining me is Jeremy Scherf, and we're going to talk about Camp Canopy. He's the co-director of Camp Canopy. And Jeremy, am I remembering this right? In my day there, it wouldn't have been called Ohio Forestry Camp. Is it the same thing?
Basically the same thing, maybe a little improved and a little bigger. We had to reinvent the wheel at some point.
Speaking of bigger and better, let's go straight to sponsorships is what you can get to attend this. And there's a lot of different ways to do that. We'll come back to that in a second. But at the end, there's an opportunity to actually, through testing and your experience there, earn scholarships. So let's hit the sponsorships first. How can we get somebody else to help cover our expense to go?
There are organizations all over Ohio that want to send kids to this camp, and a lot of money goes unused. I don't want anybody to feel like the financial burden is going to prevent them from coming. It's best to start with your county soil and water conservation district office and ask them. If you're in 4-H or FFA, ask your leaders in those programs, your OSU extension office, your local sportsman's club. If all else fails, give us a call at the Ohio Forestry Association office, and we'll connect you with an available sponsorship.
And the dates this year for Camp Canopy are June 8th through the 13th, and it's hosted for several years now at FFA Camp Muskingum in Carrollton, correct?
It is. We've been there well over, I think, 25 years.
So things like tree ID, the idea of measuring how many potential board feet are in a tree that's still standing, all of that kind of stuff, as well as chainsaw safety, and a great time meeting other people with similar interests.
It really is. Learning more about forestry. I always tell kids, my goal isn't to turn you into forester. My goal is to teach you more about forestry and wildlife, expand your appreciation of it. And if you decide you want it as a career, great. But if you go off and be a doctor or a lawyer, then you know a lot more about this too.
Part of that broadening of your education we've talked about for years.
Exactly, yes.
Jeremy Scherf, my guest, and you can find complete details at campcanopy.com. And let's talk about meat exports. February pork exports totaled 241,179 metric tons, down 4% from the large year-ago volume, which value fell 2% to $261.5 million. Exports soared to Central America in February, and export value to Mexico exceeded $200 million for the 8th consecutive month. Shipments also increased to the Philippines, New Zealand, and Cuba. For the first 2 months of 2025, pork exports were 3% below last year's record pace at 485,144 metric tons, with value down 2% to $1.34 billion. I can't say enough about the tremendous demand for U.S. pork in Mexico and Central America, where the U.S. industry continues to move a wider range of center-of-the-plate cuts to a variety of end cuts, said U.S. Meat Export Federation and President and CEO Dan Holstrom. Unfortunately, the strong performance there has been offset by a slow start to the year in Japan and South Korea. And although February shipments to China were slightly above last year, exports may have been larger if not for the uncertainty over plant eligibility, which wasn't resolved until mid-March. And in February and March of this year, many U.S. pork and beef and poultry plants, as well as cold storage facilities, were due for a 5-year eligibility renewal by China's General Ministry of Customs. Pork and poultry plants were renewed on the March 16th expiration date, but GACC still has not renewed the eligibility of any U.S. beef establishments, and the majority of U.S. beef production is now ineligible for China. Back with more after this. Soybeans are a game changer for Ohio's pork industry. Pigs thrive on soybeans' perfect blend of protein and energy, helping hogs nationwide devour the equivalent of 292 million bushels of soybean meal annually. Ohio is number 7 in pork production, contributing to the billions of pounds of pork enjoyed by families across the nation each year. From sizzling bacon to barbecued ribs, soybeans power the farms that feed families. Brought to you by Ohio soybean farmers and their checkoff. Attention Ohio businesses. Join the Ohio Bureau of Workers' Compensation for the 2025 Ohio Safety Congress and Expo, April 16th through the 18th at the Greater Columbus Convention Center. Connect with industry experts, have hands-on training sessions, explore cutting-edge safety solutions with over 300 exhibitors. Whether you're looking to reduce risks, enhance productivity, or build a stronger safety culture, the Ohio Safety Congress is for you. Register at www.ohiosafetycongress.com. It's free. Couple notes on the calendar. On Tuesday, powered by Soy Biodiesel, we'll head down to Ohio Corn and Wheat and find out more about their latest discussions. I'm going to guess tariffs will be a big part of that. And also, Stay ahead in soybean farming with the latest research and insights. Follow the Ohio Field Leader Program at ocj.com. It is brought to you by the Ohio Soybean Council and the Soybean Checkoff. Well, let's talk more about exports. Beef exports totaled 98,198 metric tons in February. That was down 5.5% from a year ago, while value declined 4% to just over $800 million. February exports increased year over year to South Korea, Canada, Egypt, and the Philippines, and reached the highest value on record to Panama. Shipments were lower to Japan, China, Hong Kong, and Mexico. Though beef variety meat exports to Mexico increased, January-February shipments were 1% below last year's pace at 201,038 metric tons, but value increased 1% to $1.6 billion. It was encouraging to see beef exports to Korea trend higher despite considerable economic and political headwinds, and Canada's demand for U.S. beef has been very robust to start the year, Holstrom said, but exports to China lost momentum in February, likely due in part to the slowdown after the Chinese New Year and the questions about plant eligibility. Unfortunately, China has still failed to address the issue of beef plant renewals. This impasse definitely hit our March beef shipments even harder, and the severe impact will continue until China lives up to its commitments under the Phase 1 Economic and Trade Agreement. Today's market analysis is brought to you by the Louis Dreyfus Company. Excited to be building the newest state-of-the-art soybean crush facility in Upper Sandusky, Ohio. To market your soybeans to LDC or to find out more about it, call 574-566-2113. Here's Ryan Martin.
A rough finish to the week in the markets last week. As we take a look back, Thursday and Friday, massive losses in the soy complex. Corn, lower each day, but then tried to gain some of it back as we finished out Thursday and Friday. The wheat markets were underwater both days as well. What happened? Well, late Wednesday, we had the announcement of reciprocal tariffs, and the market went nuts. We did see the Dow futures off huge at 2 days in a row. NASDAQ, S&P, energy markets were down big, so it was a risk-off approach everywhere. All right, here's the thing. We heard over the weekend that maybe there is some movement on tariffs. According to one White House advisor or Trump advisor, about 50 countries reportedly have contacted the White House to start trade talks. Now, on the flip side, the EU is expected to announce a list of U.S. products that will be hit with additional duties on the Monday night, Tuesday timeframe. So not here as we start the day, but overnight tonight into tomorrow. As we saw back in the 1819 trade war, tariffs aren't necessarily bullish, and we probably have to look for prolonged negative sentiment in the markets, or all markets at this point, as they form a short-term bottom in the next few days or weeks. What do you do with that? Well, definitely keep your eyes open for opportunities. In my mind today is a let's see what happens day, and we go from there. No finalized trade negotiations were reported over the weekend. Instead, discussions ongoing. We're also hearing from the Commerce Secretary and the Treasury Secretary. We heard from them over the weekend defending the new tariffs, especially with China. The China story, I think, is going to be the one that takes the longest to kind of work through. We do have a WASDE report on Thursday, but it's going to be minor given the quarterly grain stocks info from last Monday. I'm Ryan Martin.
And thanks, Ryan. I'll have the overnight figures after this.
Every time you use biodiesel, you're fueling more than your engine. You're investing in Ohio's farmers, reducing emissions and creating cleaner air for all of us. Did you know biodiesel adds 13% in value to every bushel of soybeans grown? That's good for farms, good for families, and good for the future. Drive with purpose. Choose biodiesel. Learn how at soyohio.org.
Today's market's brought to you by Seed Consultants. Simply better performance online at seedconsultants.com. Overnight at the open, May corn down 3 1/4 at $4.57. December down 3 1/2 at $4.43 1/4 cent. The May beans are down 4 1/2 at $9.72 1/2. November new crop is down 6 3/4 at $9.77 1/2. July wheat down 2 1/4 at $5.40 1/2. September $5.55 1/2, down 2 cents. In livestock, Friday's close, April cattle down $5.42 at $202.62. May lean hogs down $3.45 at $85.12. And May feeder cattle down $8.25 at $274.87. This is the Ohio AgNet.